To let you guys know, who am I? Why am I talking about this? I'm Nat, and I work at Exceptional Individuals as the head of community. But more importantly, I also have autism, as well as dyslexia and dyspraxia. When I was younger, I just got told, okay, you're high functioning, and no one really told me what that means. All I thought was the negatives. I never really thought about what positives could be attached to that diagnosis. The important thing is today, you guys will 100% resonate with some of the things I mentioned. That does not mean you're definitely autistic. Or you might be autistic and think, that doesn't sound like me at all. But a little bit about what is Exceptional Individuals. We are a UK-based company. You might have guessed it from the accent. And we support those who are neurodiverse. And essentially all that means is those who think differently. And we specialize in those with dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD. But there's also others that count, such as dyscalculia, dysgraphia, OCD, Tourette's. It all overlaps into flows. So autism used to be the one that was known as if you were neurodivergent, but now it has blended into all the others. And that's where we go. As an organization, we do a wide range of things, but the vast majority of our team are neurodivergent. You've seen the background. We've got a lovely team. I believe we've got April in the audience today, who's one of our fantastic volunteers, and we've also got a few of our staff members. And we help recruit diverse talent. If you're autistic and you're really struggling to find a job which is inclusive, you can always drop your CV to us. And we work with a lot of companies that we have personally trained to make sure they at least know the bare basics to support you in the workplace. We do assessments. Maybe you can't afford to get a diagnosis because I'm not going to lie, they're expensive. And sometimes you've got to question whether they're actually worthwhile or not. But we can do a free one in the workplace to UK people at least. And in each of your respective countries, there may be different schemes which allow you to get the same support you would get had you had an official diagnosis anyway. First of all, what is autism or what is neurodiverse? Because you need to know exactly what we're talking about. Is it a disability? Is it a deficit? Or is it a difference? Well, we like to use a Spikey Profile like Exceptional Individuals. And why we like it is that it doesn't focus on disadvantages. And it doesn't just focus on strengths, it shows you the broad range. If you see on this graph, and this is just an example, the skill sets could be different for each individual. You, for instance, could be amazing at mathematics, but then overly average at being creative. Or you might be an amazing decision maker and pretty poor at communicating. Neurodivergence is normally the fluctuation of abilities, where someone who is neurotypical, someone who doesn't have any of that stuff, tends to be a good all-rounder. We are specialists. And that's how I describe neurodiversity to people. I'm a specialist. Again, am I autistic? Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, okay, we've got autism, we've got high functioning, we've got ASD, we've got Asperger's. What is this focusing on? This is focusing on the general ASD diagnosis, and that's because that is the most up-to-date one in terms of they got all these different brackets and they switched them together to do one general overall one. But if you are already diagnosed with Asperger's, it still is a thing, even though people aren't diagnosing it going forward. All right, now we're going to do some fun things. What activities would you rather do? And I spent a lot of time picking these adorable gifts. So do you like reading, sports, or gaming? If you had to pick, what would be your favorite thing to do? And trust me, there's a reason why we're doing this. The majority of you said you like reading, very few like sports, a couple like to party, and a decent percentage like gaming. Rachel says she likes to read, but through audiobooks, and I'm the same. To me, I don't really see there being a difference. I say I read books, even though I always listen to Audible. But the reason we did this is people with autism. Well, autism, if you go back to the Greek origin of the word, it just means alone. People who like to be more isolated, prefer the company of themselves. Reading is a very typical escape, or any audiobooks, anything along those lines. Sports, and this is an assumption, but tends to be quite low on people who like autism. Mainly because I think a lot of it requires cooperation, being a team player overall. Now, I love cycling, I like running, I like doing things on my own. But just to say that, there are always instances. I think there's an Australian guy, I forget his name, or maybe New Zealand, who's a really famous surfer who has autism. There's always going to be an exception to the rule. Socializing typically normally is quite low down, and gaming, if you think about it, isn't too dissimilar from reading. Dia says she likes socializing, but only in a controlled way. And I'm the same. I love socializing with my friends, but if you say, do you want to go to a networking party? Oh, I'm not so keen on that. We've got a few more of these, and hopefully we can build up a bit of empathy. So you see this lovely picture of the Mona Lisa by our lovely Leonardo DiCaprio. No, not Leonardo DiCaprio, Leonardo da Vinci. What do the facial expressions on the Mona Lisa tell us about how she's feeling? From her facial expressions, what's she trying to tell us? And thank you, April. The surfer guy is called Clay Marzo. Serena says, okay, curious. We've got who knows, pensive, I don't know, wishful and amused, sad, bored, it doesn't, nothing, shy, I don't care. Good job it doesn't tell me who said these. Bored, sneaky, content, she's content, no idea, multiple things, sad. It's impossible to tell if she's happy or sad, struggling to read. Well, if you guys notice, there's a good amount of people in this chat, but no one of us can decide. And I picked this image because even for those who aren't autistic, this is a very difficult picture to get across. But for autistic people in general, it can be quite difficult to read facial expressions, that subtle emotion. Yes, I know that means happy. I know that means sad. But if you go that subtle differences can be hard to pick up on. And this is why, like nuances, when maybe you make people upset when you don't mean to, or you're unintentionally funny and you don't really understand why. It's because of those like mixed signals. And that is a very typical autistic trait. So I like to think, just like the Mona Lisa, which is considered the best painting in the world by a lot of people, autistic people are very similar. Some of the best people in the world, but good luck trying to read them. Just another fun one. What is something you collect? Is there anything that you guys love collecting? Are you a stamp collector? Do you love a bit of train spotting? And I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. For me, I collect acorn. Weird, right? I just love nature. So, I find some, really nice ones and I paint them and I sell them on Etsy. I like being really creative. When I was younger, I used to collect sticks and stones. I just like the texture, the smoothness, and obviously, like most people, progressed onto Pokemon. So we've got nothing, house plants, Minnie Mouses. I'm guessing that's April. Yes, cards, ornaments, hoodies. Yeah, I'm wearing my nice hoodie today. DVDs, stationery, nice. Vintage My Little Ponies, nice. Plushies, Christmas decorations. Wow, we've got some interesting things. A very typical trait of autism is very overlaps with OCD. Like you can get obsessive almost or fixated on one thing. It's like the world is massive and there's much stimulant. It's far easier to focus narrowly on one particular area. Like April, for instance, might possibly be the world's most knowledgeable individual on Minnie Mouse ears. While the other world doesn't interest her, that thing you can focus on. But again, just because you're a stamp collector doesn't mean you're autistic. But what it does mean is that the likelihood, is higher than those who do not have that thing with collecting. And it doesn't just have to be collecting in the conventional sense. For instance, on IMDb, I like to make sure that I've seen as many films as possible that are on like the top 500 films before you die. And in a way that's collecting to like a database in my head. Kitchen gadgets, Squishmallows? Oh, no, I don't know what that is. Beer mats, bonsais, nice. Shiny stuff. All right, magpie. Cool. What is the Queen's official birthday? And I hope you appreciate the face I picked. It was my favourite one of the Queen. The 2nd of June, 12th of June, 20th of November, or 21st of April. The Queen's official birthday. Interesting. So it is actually the 2nd of June. And for those of you who are like, oh, I know she was born on the 12th of June, that's when she was born. But her official birthday was the 2nd of June. And I believe the 20th of November was her coronation, and the 21st of April was her anniversary. Now, how does this relate to autism? I'm sure, April's doing her research now, I can always tell. How does this relate to autism? Well, just like being a collector, you can also be like a collector of knowledge and facts. And people with autism are far more likely to be a real stickler for dates. And that's the thing. So if you're a royalist, you'll know everything there is. For me, I'm a Leninist, but not in the sense that you're thinking. I know everything there is to know about John Lennon, or at least I like to hope so. From, when he was born, when he changed the name of the Beatles, when he met Yoko Ono, when he had his lost weekend. I can go into exceptional detail. So yeah, dates and obsession almost with dates is a very common trait. Now, 2 of 3. All right, what happened in 19... Was it the fall of the Berlin Wall? Was it Margaret Thatcher becoming PM? Did the Titanic sink? Or did actor James Dean die? Rachel just asked, can you be autistic and not have deep, interests in these areas? Absolutely. Remember, these are characteristics. For an official diagnosis is far more complex than this, and it takes all the things together, and it's done on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, Margaret Thatcher became the UK's first, and we'll say only, female Prime Minister. What a Theresa May anyway. Now, this is another one because, again, with dates can be another thing. With people with dyslexia, for example, might struggle to remember particular dates or numbers, or those with dyscalculia. Those with autism might have a far more attuned mind when it comes to remembering exact dates in history. There are certain conditions where people have exceptional memory retention with numbers, but just a slight more appreciation. Maybe you remember people's birthdays more than others. Or there's certain dates that, for who knows what reason, you just remember. Fun fact, where I live, the Titanic left. We did a really good job of making sure it was top-notch. What is the first thing you saw or see in this image? A quick look, don't look at it too long. As soon as you see it, write it down. Okay, let's see what you guys have got. People, 2 old people, elderly couple. See, this in itself shows how diverse people are when it comes to writing answers, because what should have happened is that, the more answers you guys write, the bigger the word gets. But we got men playing guitar, 2 different things, people singing. Nice. Cup, lamp, a guitar. And if you see, now this image, you've either got there 2 people singing, with a little guitar with Mexican hats, I assume, having a good time. Or you've got an elderly couple there facing each other, a woman and a man, and neither answer is wrong. And that's what I really want to get across when it comes to autism. Yes, it's a different way of thinking, but it's not a wrong way of thinking. You can still look at the same thing that anyone else looks at and still get a different answer. And there's not a particular one. I'm not saying if you see the guy playing a guitar, you're autistic, or you've got Asperger's, you see the old couple. It doesn't work like that. But what it does mean is that maybe when your friends or family sees something, you sometimes pick up on a different detail. And that's because the way that you look at the picture can be different to what your brain focuses on. Cool. Well done on that, guys. What would you get the most enjoyment out of? This you just slide in terms of enjoyment level. Similar to what we said earlier, we've got either would you enjoy going to the library more, or would you enjoy going to a party? Essentially, being on your own or being with people. Now, Miranda says she likes to be with lots of people, and I just want to, yes, autistic people typically do prefer to be alone, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't invite us to parties. A lot of the time, I just like being asked. I might not rock up, or I might come fashionably late. But it's very much, and Mohammed says, but no more than 6 people. Yes. What a time to be autistic, eh? Suddenly, all those years of isolation are coming in handy. I'm a pro. But yeah, it's something, you can fluctuate. With none of these things, it's not like you have to be a loner all the time, but just saying more often than not, Kel has said, reading parties. What a compromise, eh? Everyone's a winner. All right, this one is story time. Here, I just want you to write anything next. Just think of something creative. Once at a work party, my boss started. Now, obviously, this could turn into chaos. This could be like Cards Against the Humanities, but try and keep it PG. Once at a party, my boss started annoying me, started dancing, talking, a game of pass the parcel, nice, dancing, did a conga line, singing a folk song, give me a pay rise. That's probably the most unrealistic one. Did a sexist joke, sadly, but probably true. Write calculus on the wall, brilliant. To sing an Oasis song, he probably sang Wonderwall. Who doesn't? To tell everyone how great he was, I'm thinking David Brent there from The Office, comparing his clothes to all the women. It made me feel sick, keeping up with the Joes. Nice. And you guys might be asking, why am I making you do this? Well, this part is to demonstrate the creativity side of autism. And typically, someone with autism might have a very good, like a creative side to them, okay? You could think you might be more likely to imagine, to be imaginative, to be a daydreamer, to think of more surreal things. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but I think, things like Rick and Morty, things that are a bit more surreal and over the place, or anime, that to me, I've seen a link between those who have autism to those who like more creative ways of storytelling. So that is why this is relevant. It doesn't always mean you can articulate this creativity, but it does mean that that creativity is up there anyway. Jan says she's got limited imagination. A lot of the time, the imagination is there, but it's not always being able to articulate it. I tend to have very strong interests, which I get upset about if I can't pursue. How true is this statement? Is that knowing that with autism, remember, the way I always explain it to people, and maybe this is the most flattering way of describing it, when horses, like police horses, have those blinkers on, they wear that not to blur their vision, but to allow it to be focused in what's in front of you and not what on the side. So it puts more emphasis on like one subject matter. And with autism, that's where the whole collecting thing comes in. It's not that you are immune or, oblivious to what is around you, but you tend to focus more heavily on something which interests you. And if that thing gets stopped or you get told you can't do it, your brain like short wires. And this is why a lot of people tend to like act up or be naughty when they're in school. It's because they get blocked of doing what their brain would do. Think of it like a circuit. If you cut the circuit, the light turns off. And in school, you're expected to have the light on all the time. Now, this is a bit of a different one. I want you to rank the facts in terms of what you find most interesting. What have we got, Mr. Trump? The king of facts. The first one is, the moon has moon. While wood frog can hold its pee for up to 8 months, your nostrils work one at a time. There's no such thing as pear cider. Which one do you think was the most interesting to you? I only care about the facts if I can fit them into a system or pattern. Then I am fascinated. But if are utterly random with no connection to other things, I forget the facts. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's really typical. A way that I would explain that to people is that, when people in school say, I hate algebra, it makes no sense to me. And it's because you can't link it up to real world scenarios. But if you say, we're going to be learning how to do your finances today to make money, suddenly there's a purpose towards it and the brain is able to latch onto it. Now, here, for the facts, we've got currently the one you guys find most interesting is that wood frogs can hold their pee up to 8 months. I can't even seem to do it for 8 minutes. But yeah, that is interesting. The moon has moonquakes, like earthquakes. The nose works one at a time. The nostrils, I knew that. Apparently, like this one works, and then with your like circadian rhythm, it will like switch different nostrils, and that's to stop one getting overused. I'm sure Michael Gove could probably do with that knowledge. And there's no such thing as pear cider. I actually thought you guys would find that a bit more interesting. I found it interesting anyway. You probably thought, I've had pear cider. I had it at Spoons the other day. Well, technically you didn't, because cider is only made from apples. And if you have it, if pear is actually called something completely different that I can't remember, But basically, no one was buying pears. So they rebranded it and called it cider, even though technically it's not. Perry, yes, Jenny, Rihanna, thank you. It's called Perry. Very interesting point about Perry. You know what, guys? You may have learned nothing about autism today, but at least you know about Perry. And why this relates to autism is, do you see how passionate I got? Because I love facts. And it's a very typical autistic trait where you're able to like pinpoint different things. And my memory isn't that good, but when it comes to remember particular facts, I don't know why, I'm great. Did you know that all polar bears are left-handed? That's something I've never forgotten. Or the Romans used to make dice out of sheep knuckles. Another April, if you don't mind me using you as another example, is amazing at quizzes. Just able to like beat us every time. All I can say is, I'm glad we're not doing a whole quiz today. All right, in Harry Potter, now obviously I'm going to pick Harry Potter, I love it. Is Professor Snape a good or a bad character towards Harry? All right, Divya thinks he's a good guy, but anyone else? You know, he's a bit mean. Would you say he's a good or a bad character? I'm just assuming most of you have read or watched Harry Potter. If none of you have, wow, stop this webinar right now and go put it on. Okay, what? 8 of you have never watched it or read it. You muggles. Now, okay, good, bad. Now, interestingly, the vast majority of you have said he's a bad character. And what's interesting is that it's actually quite widespread. Now, with autism, it can be quite difficult to read between the lines, to see like hidden context. So, like sometimes when your mate says like, and pardon my language, oi, dickhead, they're not actually caught being mean to you. It's endearing. And it's that hidden context which someone with autism might struggle to pick up on. And in Harry Potter, Snape is very mean to Harry. He's always kind of like picking on him, having a go at him. He's a bit of a jerk, to be fair. And everyone hates him, thinks, he's the worst teacher. But actually, all he's trying to do is protect Harry. And it's through being mean and distance towards him is his way of keeping Harry safe. And you see how there's like more context and layers here. If you're the person to take things on face value, again, very typical with those who are on the spectrum, but if you're able to see, a bit more detail, now that's not to say if you're a massive Harry Potter fan, you will not understand it, but I'm just saying as a general example. Miranda says it took her ages to suss it out. Thanks. And Richard, we are not talking about employment that much today. Today is just about finding out the characteristics of autism and whether or not you have them. Yeah, well, Snape, he is a jerk, but he means well. How many people would you consider a friend? Alexandra said Snape may have been good, but he was an absolute jerk. Yeah, I prefer cats. Cool. How many people would you consider a friend? Oh, relate to the question, makes sense. Quite a lot of you have 1 or 2. Most of you have 3 to 6. Only 3 of you are super popular. Now, friends is interesting. What do you consider a friend? Is it someone you could tell your whole life to and trust to the end of days? Is it your Paul to your Lennon? Or is it someone you got on LinkedIn or on Facebook? For me, I think it's been proven like we can only have like 6 friends, really, people who truly get you. So those with autism typically struggle to make friends, or at least struggle to make decent, long-lasting friends. Now, in many ways, that sounds like a negative, but I actually have always seen it as a positive, because yes, you might not have up to 30 friends. You might only have 1 or 2, but those 1 or 2 will be ones that stick through you throughout your entire life and be ones you can really depend upon. Or you might just like cats, which, who doesn't? That's a typical thing. And you can normally tell that on quite early on, that you've got 2 kids together, one's autism, one hasn't, the other one wants to socialize, hang out, and the other one just doesn't really seem that interested. And this does actually translate into adult life when you're in the work environment where you have to do socials. You'll go along, but it's not really something that you yearn or crave for as much. Willa says, friends is general people I know, but I only have 1 trusted friend, my hubby. Ain't that cute? But then Jenny says her dog's her best friend. And you know what? I totally get you. I got lots of pet rabbits and I love them. They're all my best buddies. Look at the patterns. What pattern comes next? And for this, you've got to just message me. You can either private message me in the comments. And I just want you to look at it and think really quickly, can you work out, is it A, B, C, or D, which is the next pattern in this series? Why is this relevant to autism? Well, people with autism typically are very fantastic problem solvers. I don't want to pigeonhole any of you, but there's so many people with autism who work in the tech sector, work in coding, able to deconstruct different things. And this is being able to take things down to their core assets, being able to analyze them to the micro detail. You might start to see now how things from collecting and being analytical to spot the difference, how it all overlaps. It's all about how the brain, pinpoints what it chooses to focus on rather than taking in the whole information. But the answer here is B. And it's because if you see we've got blue there, the next one is blue's one step down, the next one, the blue is a step further, and on B, blue is at the bottom, but it goes down, down, down. This is just one quick example. We're almost there. All right, this is a bit of a cheeky fun one. Reading between the lines, what is Trump really saying? Here he says, windmills are the greatest thing in the US. Are the greatest threat to the US, to both bald and golden eagles. I won't even try to do the accent anymore. Media claims fictional global warming is worse. So in this statement, what is Trump trying to say? And this goes back to autism, or people with autism or autistics really struggling to read between the lines. Again, you say something, they'll take it on face value. And that's why humor and jokes can be quite tough, because jokes is all about the hidden context. Innuendos are all about that bit behind, what you're really trying to say. Is that a gun in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? To someone who struggles with innuendos and the hidden line that go right over the head, to anyone else, they'll be like, So let's see what you guys have said Trump is really saying. Now we've got eagles need protecting from windmills. Well, from what he said, that would seem like the obvious one. The media can't be trusted, re-elect me, I'm telling the truth. Or fossil fuels mean more money for the US, which makes me look good. Or we should focus less on the climate and more on America. See, when you actually break it down, it's quite actually tough to understand what is someone really putting. For me, I would say the answer is that in the end of the day, everything he says is about getting re-elected, about proving that his way of thinking makes sense. Because if you construct it all down, fossil fuels makes the most money from the US. They sell it all around the world. Their basic country goes on it. If we keep using fossil fuels, then the economy will do great. If the economy is doing great, he'll get re-elected. And eagles are symbolic of America, and he's, America first. You can break down a very simple statement about windmills until you get some real hidden context. And that can be something that those with autism might really find challenging. This is always fun. If you guys ever played Where's Wally, or if you're American, Where's Waldo, have a look in this image and I want you to find Waldo, but do not put it in the comments, okay? I'm just going to give you a few seconds to find Waldo or Wally, and then we'll see how many of you got it right. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where was Wally? Was he in the top left, the bottom right, the bottom left, bottom right, or the center? And I'll be honest with you, this was an easier one. I was going to be mean and give you the image. When there's a billion different Wally and you've got to find the right one? But I thought I won't be that harsh today. But for those who don't know what he looks like, he's just a tall, lanky guy with glasses who have white and red stripes on him. Cool, yeah. Guys, he was in the center. He was a little guy in the middle. Yeah, resembles this guy with a little hat. And if you get really creative, you can also find his little dogs, you can find his arch enemy, you can find his missus, you got the whole section. And this comes down to people with autism typically see the big picture. Typically struggle seeing the big picture. As someone who is neurotypical, you might see the whole image, just like the picture with the couple and the musicians, like they were the same size as each other, but the brain focused on different elements. With Wally, you might actually find these things a bit easier. Dia says, having trouble keeping up with that answer on the phone, was looking at the laptop screen. All right, sorry, Dia, I'll try to go a bit slower. And with this, if you're the type of person who will always pick out the details, now this can demonstrate itself in a number of ways. It could be that you're quite critical because you're like, that shelf's wonky, or that image is okay, but that doesn't actually look like Minnie Mouse because her nose isn't quite like that. But you're more likely to pick up defects or things that aren't quite right. Or if you're watching a film, you're more likely to pick up on Easter eggs, things that are like hidden in on little things. If you watch Finding Nemo, I'm pretty sure there's like a Buzz Lightyear who's sunk to the bottom. On all the Pixar movies, there's like little nods. In Frozen, I believe you can see Rapunzel with her haircut at the wedding. There's like lots of little things. And again, the autistic trait, seeing details that others may miss. And as you can imagine, that's a very positive thing. So though that was all of like the fun games, and I hope you guys gave it a bit of an insight on terms of those of autism. You probably thought, there's a lot of things you said which made much sense to me. I think it's worth me exploring this a bit further. Now, we have a characteristics quiz which has 50 questions, which I recommend you guys doing if you have time. And though you can't go away saying, I'm autistic, I got a high score, what you can do is go away to your GP, a doctor, someone who is qualified, and say, I did this and I ranked quite highly on this. Do you think this is something which is worth exploring a little bit further? Or you might think, okay, I'm pretty certain I am on the spectrum because we're all on the spectrum somewhere. All I need to know now is what things can help those who have autistic characteristics. And you have those characteristics. You might not even need a diagnosis. Try to that's what I would say is next steps. For me, I think it's important for me to understand how my mind works. And if a label helps you, then cool. But it doesn't have to be an essential. Now, I'm just going to talk about how you can get some support if you did resonate. So Dia says, I think I'm not autistic. I have had really different sense of humor and laugh when I'm not supposed to, and I'm blunt, though I do like online quizzes. Is it possible to move off the spectrum? For after listening to you, I definitely tick all the boxes in my childhood, all the way to my 20s, but now it's just socialization that is uncomfortable. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but yes, absolutely. So you can't, as I said, autism is for life. But what can happen as you get older, you naturally adjust and find coping mechanisms. But it sounds to me that the other things have just gone easier, or you've adapted rather than got rid of.
Matt, can I make a point on that last reflection? Is that I think you're absolutely right, because I think if we reflect our childhoods, we can see all our difficulties. But as we grow up, we develop our own coping strategies to survive, exist, and participate in the world. And that's really great. But I think, unfortunately, what happened, and I can reflect this in my own experience, that if those around you, for example, in the workplace, start to strip away them coping mechanisms that you've had and demand you, place greater demands on you to be more like neurotypical, to blend in with neurotypical, then the coping strategies can be weakened and your traits of autism can present greater and then cause further problems. People will see you even more different in the workplace. And I think, unfortunately, you become a target for bullying. And that's the reason why I think it's important, as somebody who's recently diagnosed with autism, to know if you're autistic or not, to understand your brain, which is something you said, Matt, and that I think it's really important we understand our brain and then try and help educate those around us who understand us in order to be able, to access, for example, the workplace or education or whatever we might be doing, and to have pleasure in it opposed to it being a battle.
I absolutely agree. This is Rachel, Amy. And I'm not diagnosed with autism, but I really want to get tested to see if I am, because as I've just said in my comment, things aren't don't quite fit. But I've had issues in the workplace before, basically along the lines of what you said. And it's true that if people strip away your coping mechanisms, it just ends in disaster, really.
Really well articulated, and I completely agree with you. If you guys ever want to have an assessment, which is a workplace assessment, and this is particularly aimed at those in the UK, you can again just go on our website and see if you're eligible. But the only criteria really is that you're in the UK and have a job and you resonate with being neurodivergent. And if that is the case, then there's a strong possibility you might be eligible. I really recommend you have a look at our upcoming events, which again will be in the email. And I'd love to see you guys again.
Okay, thanks, Nat. I've really enjoyed your presentation. That's been really helpful.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I second that. Thanks.